Rain poured down in sheets as she stood at the edge of the bridge, her thin jacket soaked through. The water below churned dark and angry. Joy watched the man sway dangerously close to the railing, his expensive suit drenched, his eyes unfocused. Nobody else was around at this late hour. The streetlights cast long shadows across the wet pavement. She had come here to think about her own troubles, the eviction notice, another job rejection, the empty fridge back home. But this stranger looked like he might jump. "Hey!" she called out, her voice almost lost in the storm. "Step back from there." The man turned slowly, his face blank with despair. He looked right through her as if she wasn't even there. Joy moved closer, her heart racing. She knew that look. She had seen it in her own mirror many times since her family had cut her off 3 years ago. "Whatever it is, it's not worth your life," she said, inching toward him. "Trust me on that." The man laughed, a hollow sound with no humor. "You don't know anything about my life." "Maybe not," Joy replied, now just a few feet away. "But I know what it's like to want to disappear." Something in her words seemed to reach him. His eyes focused on her for the first time. He was handsome despite his current state, tall with broad shoulders and dark eyes that held a profound sadness. "Why would someone like you understand?" he asked, his words slightly slurred. Joy realized he was drunk, making the situation even more dangerous. "Because I've stood where you're standing," she answered truthfully. "Just not on this bridge." A car passed by, its headlights briefly illuminating them both. In that flash of light, Joy saw tears mixing with the rain on the man's face. She reached out slowly and offered her hand. "Come on. Let's get out of this rain and talk. I'll buy you a coffee." He stared at her hand for what felt like forever. The rain drummed around them. Finally, his shoulders slumped in defeat or acceptance. She couldn't tell which, and he took her hand. His was ice cold. "I don't even know your name," he said quietly as she gently led him away from the edge. "I'm Joy." "Daniel," he replied. She guided him toward the all-night diner at the end of the bridge. She only had $7 to her name, money she'd been saving for breakfast tomorrow. But something told her this man needed help more than she needed that meal. What Joy didn't know as they walked away from the bridge was that the man beside her owned the very diner they were heading to. In fact, Daniel Matthews owned half the buildings in this part of the city. The watch on his wrist, despite being soaked, was worth more than she would make in 3 years, if she could find work. She also didn't know that this night would change both their lives forever. They entered the warm diner, dripping water onto the checkered floor. The waitress looked up with tired eyes that widened slightly at Daniel's appearance. Joy guided him to a booth in the corner, away from the curious stares of the few other late-night customers. "2 coffees, please," Joy said to the waitress. She counted out her precious dollars on the table. Daniel watched her hands, work-worn but gentle, as she arranged the worn bills. Something stirred in him, some feeling he thought had died months ago when his world had collapsed despite all his money. "Why are you helping me?" he asked after the waitress left. "You don't know me." Joy shrugged, her wet clothes clinging uncomfortably to her thin frame. "Nobody should feel alone enough to stand on that bridge," she said simply. "Not you, not me, not anybody." The coffee arrived hot and steaming. Joy wrapped her cold hands around the mug, savoring the warmth. Daniel did the same, his expensive watch glinting under the fluorescent lights. "Tell me why you were there tonight," she said. And surprisingly he did. Daniel stared into his coffee, the steam rising between them. Joy waited patiently, giving him time. She knew all too well how hard it could be to put pain into words. "I lost someone," he finally said. "My grandfather. He was the only person who ever really knew me." Joy nodded, understanding loss. "I'm sorry. Everyone else just sees what I have, what I can do for them. But he saw me." Daniel's voice cracked slightly. "He died 3 months ago. That's why you were on the bridge?" Joy asked gently. Daniel's laugh was bitter. "That's part of it. Today would have been his birthday. But there's more." He took a deep breath. "After he died, I found out that my company has been doing some terrible things. Things I should have known about, should have prevented. People got hurt because I wasn't paying attention." Joy didn't ask what kind of company or what kind of harm. It didn't matter right now. She just listened. "I could have stopped it if I'd been more involved instead of letting others run things while I—" He trailed off, looking ashamed. "While you what?" "While I traveled and bought things I didn't need and dated women who only wanted my money." The self-loathing in his voice was thick. Joy sipped her coffee, thinking. "So now what? Jumping off a bridge fixes any of that?" Daniel looked up, surprised by her directness. "No, but..." "But nothing," Joy interrupted. If you messed up, you fix it. If you hurt people, you make it right. Dying just means you never tried. Her words hung between them. Outside, the rain continued to beat against the windows, but it had softened now, more gentle than fierce. You make it sound simple, Daniel said. It's not simple. It's hard. Life is hard. Joy's eyes drifted to the window, her reflection ghostly against the dark glass. I lost my family 3 years ago. Not to death. They just decided I wasn't worth keeping around. Daniel's expression shifted to one of concern. What happened? Joy rarely talked about this with anyone, but tonight felt different. Something about this stranger made her want to share her story. I got pregnant at 19. The father left as soon as I told him. My parents had always been strict, but I thought. She swallowed hard. I thought they'd support me, help me. Instead, they called me terrible names and threw me out. Said I'd brought shame on them. Daniel's face darkened with anger on her behalf. That's cruel. It was, Joy agreed. But the worst part came later. I lost the baby at 5 months. Complications, they said. And when I called home, thinking maybe now they'd let me come back, my mother said it was for the best and hung up. She had to stop for a moment, the memory still painful after all this time. I'm so sorry, Daniel whispered. I survived, Joy said, straightening her shoulders. I've been on my own since then. It's been hard, especially lately. Jobs are scarce, rent is high. I got an eviction notice yesterday. She smiled thinly. That's why I was walking in the rain tonight, trying to figure out my next move. Daniel looked at her with new eyes. This woman who had $7 to her name had spent it on coffee for a suicidal stranger when she was facing homelessness herself. Where will you go? He asked. Joy shrugged. I've got 3 days to figure it out. I'll manage. She had no idea how, but she'd survived worse. The waitress came by to refill their cups. Joy noticed how she lingered, looking curiously at Daniel. Did she recognize him? Joy wondered if he was local, maybe someone important. His clothes, though wet, were clearly expensive. Do you have family? Joy asked after the waitress left. Besides your grandfather, I mean. Daniel nodded. Parents, a sister. But we're not close. They're more interested in their social standing than actual relationships. His mouth twisted. When I told them what I'd discovered about the company, they told me to cover it up. Keep the family name clean. And you didn't want to do that? No, Daniel said firmly. I want to make it right, whatever it costs. That's what my grandfather would have expected of me. Joy smiled, a genuine smile that lit up her tired face. Then you're already doing better than you think. For the first time that night, Daniel smiled back. It transformed his face, making him look younger, more approachable. They talked until their coffee cups were empty again. The rain stopped. The diner clock showed 3:45 a.m. I should go, Joy said reluctantly. I've got some job applications to fill out tomorrow. Daniel nodded, suddenly awkward. Thank you. For stopping me. For listening. Just promise me you won't go back to that bridge, Joy said seriously. I promise. And he meant it. They stepped outside into the damp night air. The street was quiet, peaceful after the storm. Can I give you a ride home? Daniel asked, reaching for his phone. Joy shook her head. I'll walk. It's not far. She didn't want him to see the rundown building where she currently lived, at least for 3 more days. Daniel hesitated, then pulled out his wallet. Joy immediately stiffened. I don't want your money, she said, a flash of pride in her eyes. It's not. Daniel stopped himself. He had been about to offer her cash, thinking it would help with her situation. But he saw now that would be the wrong approach. This woman had her dignity. At least let me thank you properly. Have dinner with me tomorrow? He asked instead. Joy studied his face, looking for pity or worse. She saw only genuine gratitude and something else, respect, perhaps. Okay, she agreed. But someplace simple. They exchanged phone numbers, Joy using her old, cracked phone with the screen that sometimes froze. As they parted ways, neither knew that forces were already in motion that would test their newly formed connection. Neither knew that eyes had watched them in the diner, that pictures had been taken. And neither knew that Daniel's family had their own plans for his future. Plans that didn't include a poor woman who lived paycheck to paycheck, when she had a paycheck at all. Joy woke to sunlight streaming through her thin curtains and the persistent buzz of her phone. Groggily she reached for it, squinting at the screen. 3 missed calls from numbers she didn't recognize and a text message from Daniel. Still on for dinner tonight? 7 p.m.? I'll send a car. The events of last night came rushing back. The bridge. The rain. The stranger who wasn't really a stranger anymore. She typed back a quick yes before dragging herself out of bed. Her studio apartment was tiny but clean. Joy took pride in keeping it neat despite its peeling paint and water stains on the ceiling. She glanced at the eviction notice still sitting on her small table and sighed. Time to face the day and its challenges. After a quick shower, she dressed in her best outfit for job hunting. Black pants that had seen better days and a blue blouse she'd found at a thrift store. She made coffee, savoring the smell since it would have to last her until tonight. Her cupboards were nearly bare. As she prepared to leave, her phone rang again. One of those unknown numbers. "Hello," she answered cautiously. "Is this Joy Wilson?" a crisp, professional voice asked. "Yes, who's calling?" "This is Margaret from Westside Investments. We received your application for our administrative assistant position. Are you available for an interview today at 2 p.m.? Joy almost dropped the phone. She'd applied for that job weeks ago and had given up hope. "Yes. Yes, I am definitely available," she said, trying to sound calm. "Excellent. We'll see you then." Joy did a little dance after hanging up. Maybe her luck was finally changing. The job paid well, enough to get a better apartment if she got it. She spent the morning researching the company and preparing for the interview. At 1:30, she set out for the Westside Investments building downtown. It was impressive, all glass and steel, rising 20 stories. Joy took a deep breath before entering, trying to calm her nerves. The receptionist directed her to the 14th floor. When the elevator doors opened, Joy stepped into a plush waiting area where a stern-looking woman sat behind a desk. "Joy Wilson for the 2 o'clock interview," she said with her most professional smile. The woman looked up, her expression unreadable. "Please have a seat. Miss Thompson will be with you shortly." Joy sat nervously, smoothing her pants and wishing she had something newer to wear. After 15 minutes, a door opened and a tall woman with perfectly styled hair emerged. "Ms. Wilson? I'm Elizabeth Thompson, HR Director. Please come in." The office was spacious with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a stunning view of the city. Joy tried not to look intimidated as she took the offered seat. "So, Ms. Wilson," Elizabeth began, reviewing a file. "Your application is quite interesting." Something in her tone made Joy uneasy. "You have gaps in your employment history," Elizabeth continued. "And no college degree." "Yes, but I have extensive experience in administrative roles," Joy explained. "And I'm excellent with organizational systems and customer service." Elizabeth smiled thinly. "I'm sure you are. But tell me, how do you know Daniel Matthews?" The question caught Joy completely off guard. What? "Daniel Matthews," Elizabeth repeated. "You were seen with him last night." Joy's mind raced. How did this woman know about that? And what did it have to do with this job? "We're acquaintances," Joy said carefully. "I don't see how that's relevant to this position." Elizabeth's smile turned cold. "It's relevant because Westside Investments is a subsidiary of Matthews Global. And Daniel Matthews is our CEO. The room seemed to tilt slightly. Daniel owned this company? He was a CEO? Joy thought back to his expensive watch, his suit, the way the waitress had looked at him. It made sense now, but why hadn't he said anything? "I didn't know," Joy said honestly. "We just met last night." Elizabeth studied her with shrewd eyes. "And yet, your application from weeks ago suddenly got flagged for immediate interview today. Interesting timing." Joy felt heat rising to her cheeks. "Are you suggesting I used a connection to get this interview? Because I didn't. I didn't even know who he was until you just told me." Elizabeth leaned forward. "Ms. Wilson, let me be direct. People like Daniel Matthews don't socialize with people like you without a reason. If you're trying to get close to him for financial gain, you should know the Matthews family protects their own." Anger flashed through Joy. "I have no idea what you're talking about. I met him by chance last night. If you must know, I helped him when he was in trouble. That's all." "Helped him?" Elizabeth looked skeptical. Joy stood up, gathering her purse. "I don't think I want this job after all. Not if this is how you treat people." As she turned to leave, Elizabeth called after her. "He's engaged, you know. The announcement is coming out next week. To Caroline Porter. They've been together for years." Joy froze, her hand on the doorknob. Engaged? Why would an engaged man ask her to dinner? Why would he have been alone on that bridge? It didn't make sense. "Thank you for your time," Joy said stiffly and walked out. She managed to keep her composure until she reached the street, then ducked into an alley to catch her breath. Her phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. "Looking forward to tonight. The car will pick you up at 6:30. Joy stared at the message, anger and confusion warring inside her. She'd spent her last dollars buying him coffee, listened to his problems, shared her own painful story, and he'd hidden who he was. Worse, he was apparently engaged to someone else. She typed back, "Dinner's off. Congratulations on your engagement." Then she turned off her phone and headed home, fighting back tears. She'd been a fool to think someone like him could be genuine. Everyone in her life eventually let her down or lied to her. Why should Daniel Matthews be any different? What Joy didn't know as she walked away was that Elizabeth Thompson was calling Daniel's mother at that very moment. And she didn't know that Daniel had no idea she'd been called for an interview at his company. She also didn't know that Daniel wasn't engaged, at least not willingly. And she certainly didn't know that his mother, Catherine Matthews, had been planning his marriage to Caroline Porter since they were children, an arrangement designed to merge two powerful families. As the afternoon sun beat down on her, Joy made a decision. She would forget Daniel Matthews. She had more pressing problems, like finding a job and a new place to live before she ended up on the street. But fate had other plans for both of them. Daniel stared at Joy's text message in confusion. Engagement? What was she talking about? He tried calling her immediately, but the call went straight to voicemail. Something was wrong. He paced his penthouse office trying to make sense of it. How could Joy have heard about Caroline? The arrangement with the Porter family wasn't public knowledge yet, and he had been fighting it for months. His phone rang. His mother's name flashed on the screen. Daniel hesitated, then answered. "Mother." "Daniel, darling," Catherine Matthews' voice was smooth as silk. "I heard you had an interesting evening last night." Daniel tensed. Of course she already knew. His mother had eyes everywhere. "I don't know what you've heard, but—" "You were seen at a diner with a young woman," Catherine interrupted. "After your concerning behavior on the bridge. Don't worry, we've made sure no photos will reach the press." Daniel gripped the phone tighter. "Were you having me followed?" "Of course not," Catherine replied, though her tone suggested otherwise. "But people talk, especially when they see the heir to Matthews Global in such a state. Your grandfather's death has clearly affected you more than we realized. Don't bring him into this," Daniel warned. "Fine." Catherine's voice hardened slightly. "But you should know your little friend came for a job interview at Westside today." "What?" Daniel was genuinely surprised. "Joy did. So that's her name." "Yes, Joy Wilson. Quite the coincidence that she applied weeks ago and suddenly got called in today, don't you think?" Daniel's mind raced. "Did you arrange this?" "I wanted to see what she was after," Catherine said coolly. "Elizabeth handled it. Apparently, Ms. Wilson was quite shocked to learn about your engagement to Caroline." Now it made sense. Joy's text, her anger. "What did you do?" Daniel demanded. "Nothing that wasn't going to become public next week anyway," Catherine replied. "The announcement is scheduled, the Porter family is expecting it, and you've had plenty of time to adjust to the idea." "I've told you I won't go through with it," Daniel said through gritted teeth. "Don't be childish," Catherine sighed. "This merger is too important for both families. Your grandfather understood that." "No, he didn't," Daniel shot back. "He told me on his deathbed to live my own life, not yours." There was a brief silence on the line. When Catherine spoke again, her voice was icy. "Your little friend from the bridge, she has quite the troubled history. No family, unstable employment, living in one of the worst buildings in the city. She's about to be evicted, did she tell you that? Is that why she approached you?" Daniel felt a surge of protective anger. "She didn't approach me, Mother. She saved me. And she spent her last dollars buying me coffee when she's facing homelessness." "How heartwarming," Catherine said sarcastically. "And now she knows you're wealthy. Convenient." "She didn't know," Daniel insisted. "Not until your HR director told her." "Well, she knows now. Be careful, darling. People like that see people like us as walking bank accounts." Daniel had heard enough. "I have to go, Mother. And for the record, the engagement announcement won't be happening next week or ever. I've already told the Porters." He hung up before she could respond, then immediately tried calling Joy again. Still no answer. Daniel ran his hand through his hair in frustration. He needed to explain to make this right. An idea struck him and he called his assistant. "Mark, I need you to get me the application details for a Joy Wilson who interviewed at Westside Investments today. Her address, specifically." Within minutes he had her information. The building was in one of the poorest areas of the city, an area his company was actually planning to redevelop, he realized with a jolt. Was her building one of those scheduled for demolition? He needed to check the files. Daniel grabbed his keys, ignoring the several meetings on his schedule. This was more important. Across town, Joy was sitting on her bed, surrounded by job listings and fighting back tears of frustration. She turned her phone back on to find 6 missed calls from Daniel and texts asking for an explanation. She deleted them all. A knock at her door startled her. Probably Mrs. Garcia from next door wanting to borrow sugar again. "Coming?" she called, wiping her eyes quickly. But when she opened the door, it wasn't Mrs. Garcia. It was Daniel, standing in her dingy hallway looking completely out of place in his tailored suit. "How did you find me?" Joy asked, too shocked to be polite. "May I come in?" Daniel asked quietly. "Please? I can explain everything." Joy hesitated, then stepped aside. Daniel entered, taking in her tiny apartment with a neutral expression. "You shouldn't be here," Joy said, crossing her arms. "Shouldn't you be with your fiancé?" Daniel sighed heavily. "That's what I need to explain. I'm not engaged, at least not willingly." He told her about the arrangement between his family and the Porters, a business merger disguised as a marriage. How he'd been fighting it for months. How his mother controlled every aspect of his life since his grandfather died. "I ended it last week," he finished. "Told Caroline and her family I wouldn't go through with it. My mother refuses to accept it." Joy listened silently, her anger gradually fading. His story rang true, matching the unhappiness she'd seen in him on the bridge. "Why didn't you tell me who you were last night?" she asked. Daniel's expression was pained. "Because for once someone was seeing me, not my name or my money. You talked to me like a person, not an ATM or a business opportunity. Do you know how rare that is in my life?" Joy could understand that. Hadn't she faced the opposite problem? People dismissing her because she had nothing? "What about that job interview today?" she asked. "Did you arrange that?" "No," Daniel said firmly. "That was my mother's doing. She was testing you, trying to find your angle." "My angle?" "She thinks everyone has an ulterior motive. She can't imagine someone helping me without wanting something in return." Joy moved to the window, looking out at the street below. "People like that see people like us as walking bank accounts," she quoted, her voice bitter. Daniel winced. "Did Elizabeth Thompson say that to you?" "No. But I've heard similar things before." Joy turned back to him. "Daniel, our worlds are completely different. Look around you. I'm being evicted in 3 days. I can't find work. Meanwhile, you own half the city." "Not quite half," he said with a small smile, trying to lighten the mood. "It didn't work. You know what I mean," Joy sighed. "Whatever this is," she gestured between them, "it can't go anywhere. Your mother made that clear." Daniel stepped closer. "My mother doesn't control my life anymore. I meant what I said last night. You helped me when I was at my lowest. You showed me kindness when you had every reason to walk past. I want to get to know you better, Joy. Not because I owe you, but because I want to." Joy felt her resolve weakening. There was such sincerity in his eyes. "Have dinner with me," he said again. "Just dinner. No expectations. I promise to tell you everything about my life, no more secrets." Before Joy could answer, her phone rang. She glanced at it. The landlord. "I have to take this," she said. The conversation was brief and devastating. The building had been sold to a development company. All evictions were being moved up. She had until tomorrow to leave. "What is it?" Daniel asked, seeing her face. "I have to be out by tomorrow," Joy said numbly. "They're demolishing the building next week." Daniel's face went pale. "Which development company?" Joy checked the notice. "Matthews Urban Development." The silence that followed was deafening. "Your company," Joy said, the pieces falling into place. "You're evicting me." "Joy, I didn't know." "Get out," she whispered. "Please let me explain." "Get out." Joy shouted, tears finally spilling over. "Haven't you and your family done enough?" Daniel looked stricken. "I'll fix this, I swear." "Just go," Joy said, turning away from him. "Please." After a moment's hesitation, Daniel left. Joy sank to the floor, overwhelmed. First her job prospect, now her home, both connected to Daniel Matthews. Was this some kind of cruel joke? What she didn't know was that Daniel was already on the phone in the hallway, calling his project manager and demanding immediate changes to the development plan. He wasn't going to let Joy lose her home, even if it meant restructuring a multi-million-dollar project. And he certainly wasn't going to let his mother win this battle. Because something had awakened in Daniel since meeting Joy, something his grandfather had always tried to nurture in him. A sense of responsibility not just for his own life, but for how his wealth and power affected others. For the first time in years, Daniel felt like he had a purpose beyond making money. And that purpose now included making things right with Joy Wilson. Joy spent the evening packing her few belongings into 2 suitcases and a backpack. Her friend Letitia had offered her couch for a week, but after that Joy had no plan. Each item she packed reminded her of how little she had to show for her years of hard work and struggle. Her phone buzzed repeatedly with messages from Daniel, but she ignored them all. What could he possibly say to make this better? His company was literally tearing down her home. The irony was too painful. Around midnight, exhausted and emotionally drained, Joy finally checked one message. I've stopped the eviction. Not just for you, for everyone in the building. Please call me. Joy stared at the screen in disbelief. Could he really do that? Or was this some kind of trick? She was too tired to figure it out tonight. Tomorrow she would go to the landlord and check if it was true. Morning came too quickly. Joy dressed and dragged her suitcases to the door, still planning to leave despite Daniel's message. She didn't trust promises, especially from someone with his resources. But when she opened her door, she found an envelope taped to it. Inside was an official letter stating that all evictions in the building had been postponed indefinitely while the development plan was being reassessed. It was signed by the property management company and had an official stamp. Joy sank onto her suitcase, the letter trembling in her hands. He had actually done it. Before she could process this, her phone rang. An unknown number. Hello, she answered cautiously. Ms. Wilson? This is Dr. Patrice Washington from City Hospital Foundation. I understand you applied for our community outreach coordinator position several months ago? Joy straightened up. Yes, I did. We'd like to offer you the position, Dr. Washington said warmly. Your experience working with community organizations and your personal background make you an excellent fit for our outreach efforts in underserved neighborhoods. Joy could hardly believe what she was hearing. This job had been her dream, working to help others access healthcare, something she had struggled with herself. The salary is $52,000 annually with full benefits, Dr. Washington continued. Can you start Monday? Yes. Joy exclaimed. Absolutely. After ending the call, Joy sat in stunned silence. Her eviction postponed and her dream job offered on the same morning? It couldn't be coincidence. She called Daniel. He answered immediately. Joy, I'm so glad you called. Did you do this? She asked without preamble. The job at the hospital? There was a brief silence. I made a donation to their community outreach program, Daniel admitted. But I didn't tell them to hire you. I just asked them to review your application fairly. Dr. Washington made the decision herself. Joy wasn't sure how to feel. On one hand, she was grateful. On the other, she didn't want charity. And the evictions? She asked. That I did do, Daniel said, his voice firm. But not just for you. I looked into the project and realized we weren't providing adequate relocation assistance for residents. It was wrong, and I've put the entire development on hold until we create a better plan. Why? Joy pressed. Why are you doing all this? Because you were right, Daniel said simply. When you said if I messed up I should fix it. If I hurt people I should make it right. That's what I'm trying to do, not just with you but with everything. Joy closed her eyes, absorbing his words. I don't know what to say. Say you'll have dinner with me tonight, Daniel suggested. No car service, no fancy restaurant. Just 2 people getting to know each other better. After a long moment, Joy agreed. Okay. But I'm choosing the place. That evening, they met at a small community garden restaurant that served farm-to-table meals at reasonable prices. It was beautiful in its simplicity, string lights hanging from trees, mismatched tables and chairs, delicious food made with care. Daniel arrived in jeans and a simple button-down shirt, looking more relaxed than Joy had seen him. She had chosen a sundress, nothing fancy but pretty. They talked for hours. Daniel told her about his grandfather, who had built their company from nothing and had always emphasized responsibility to the community. How after his death, Daniel had discovered some executives had been cutting corners on safety and environmental protections. That's what I was talking about that night on the bridge, he explained. People were harmed because I wasn't paying attention to what was happening in my own company. I've spent the last 3 months trying to fix those problems, firing the people responsible, compensating those who were hurt. Is that why your mother's been pushing this merger with the Porter family? Joy asked. To cover up these issues? Daniel nodded. The Porters have political connections that could help smooth things over. But I don't want to smooth things over, I want to make them right. Joy understood now why he had been on that bridge. The weight of responsibility, the conflict with his family, the guilt over what had happened. What about your eviction project? She asked. Daniel looked ashamed. I inherited several development projects when my grandfather died. I signed off on them without looking closely at the human impact. That was wrong. I'm going to do better. As the evening progressed, Joy found herself warming to this new version of Daniel, or perhaps the real Daniel, the one his grandfather had tried to nurture. He wasn't perfect, but he was trying to use his position to help rather than harm. Tell me more about this job you've gotten, Daniel said, genuinely interested. Community outreach? Joy's face lit up as she explained the work she would be doing, helping connect underserved communities with healthcare resources, organizing health fairs, working with local clinics. It's what I've always wanted to do, she admitted. Help people who are struggling the way I was. Daniel watched her with admiration. You're going to be amazing at it. As they parted that night, something had shifted between them. A tentative trust had formed, a connection that went deeper than their different backgrounds. Can I see you again? Daniel asked. Joy nodded. I'd like that. What neither of them noticed was the dark car parked across the street, or the camera capturing their goodbye. Catherine Matthews was not done trying to protect her family's interests, and in her mind, Joy Wilson was still a threat to everything she had planned. The next day, as Joy prepared for her new job, her phone pinged with a news alert. Her stomach dropped when she saw the headline, Matthews Heir slums it with mystery woman after breaking Porter engagement. There was a photo of her and Daniel from the previous night, his hand on her arm as they said goodbye. The article speculated wildly about her identity and suggested she was the reason for his erratic behavior since his grandfather's death. Joy's phone immediately began ringing. It was Dr. Washington from the hospital. Ms. Wilson, she said, her voice strained. I've just received a concerning call from one of our major donors about your hiring. Can you come in this afternoon to discuss the situation before you start on Monday? Joy's heart sank. Catherine Matthews was making her move. Daniel was in a board meeting when his assistant slipped him a tablet with the news article pulled up. His face darkened as he read it, noting the carefully constructed narrative that painted Joy as a gold digger who had ensnared him after his grandfather's death. Excuse me, he said, standing abruptly. Family emergency. He strode out, already dialing Joy's number. No answer. Next he called his lawyer. I need you to contact every outlet running this story, Daniel instructed. Threaten legal action for defamation. And find out who leaked this. While his lawyer went to work, Daniel tried Joy again. This time she answered, her voice tight with stress. Daniel, I can't talk right now. I have to meet with the hospital about my job. What happened? He asked, already suspecting the answer. Someone called them, Joy said quietly. A concerned donor, warning them about me. Daniel's jaw clenched. My mother. I have to go. They're waiting for me. Joy, wait, but she had already hung up. Daniel immediately called for his car. He knew exactly where his mother would be at this hour, the Matthews Foundation office, where she oversaw the family's charitable giving, including, he realized with growing anger, donations to City Hospital. 20 minutes later, he walked into his mother's elegant office without knocking. Catherine looked up from her desk, not at all surprised to see him. Daniel, darling. I was wondering when you'd stop by. Call off your attack dogs, he said without preamble. Now. Catherine raised an eyebrow. I don't know what you mean. The news story. The call to the hospital. All of it. Daniel placed both hands on her desk, leaning forward. You will not ruin Joy's life because you can't control mine. I'm merely protecting our family interests, Catherine said smoothly. This woman appears out of nowhere just as you're derailing plans years in the making. Surely you can understand my concern. You know exactly how we met, Daniel countered. Your spies told you everything. She helped me when I was at my lowest point, something my own family failed to do. Catherine's expression hardened. She's using you, Daniel. People like that always do. People like that, Daniel repeated, disgust in his voice. You mean people without money? People who work hard their entire lives and still get nowhere because the system is built to keep them down. Don't be dramatic, Catherine sighed. She saw an opportunity and took it. Daniel straightened up, suddenly calm. You know what? I'm done arguing. Call the hospital. Right now. Tell them you made a mistake. I will do no such thing. Then I'll call a press conference this afternoon, Daniel said evenly. I'll tell everyone how Matthews Global has been covering up safety violations that hurt workers. I'll detail exactly how we've been evicting low-income residents without proper compensation. And I'll explain how you tried to solve it all with a convenient marriage rather than actual accountability. Catherine's face went pale. You wouldn't dare. Wouldn't I? Daniel pulled out his phone. I'm calling the PR team right now to set it up. Stop. Catherine held up her hand. You win this round. I'll call the hospital. Daniel watched as she made the call, her voice pleasant and apologetic as she explained that there had been a misunderstanding regarding Joy Wilson. When she hung up, her eyes were cold. You're making a mistake, Daniel. She's not one of us. Thank God for that, Daniel replied, turning to leave. Oh, and Mother? If you ever try to hurt Joy again, I'll do more than threaten a press conference. I'll take control of the company completely and remove you from the board. Grandfather left me that power, remember? As he walked out, Daniel felt a weight lifting from his shoulders. For too long he had allowed his mother and the family interests to dictate his actions. No more. Across town, Joy sat nervously in Dr. Washington's office, waiting for the verdict on her employment. The older woman had excused herself to take a phone call 10 minutes ago, leaving Joy to wonder if her dream job was already over before it began. The door opened and Dr. Washington returned, her expression unreadable. Well, Ms. Wilson, she began, taking her seat. It seems there was a misunderstanding. Joy's heart sank. Here it comes, the polite dismissal. Mrs. Matthews just called to clarify that her earlier concerns were unfounded, Dr. Washington continued, surprising Joy. She actually spoke quite highly of your character and potential contribution to our organization. Joy blinked in confusion. She did? Indeed. Dr. Washington smiled warmly. So, unless you've changed your mind, we look forward to having you start on Monday. No. I mean, yes, I still want the job, Joy said quickly. Thank you for giving me a chance. You earned this position on your own merits, Ms. Wilson. I don't make hiring decisions based on gossip or pressure from donors. As Joy left the hospital, she found Daniel waiting beside his car in the parking lot. His face lit up when he saw her, and he moved forward to meet her. How did it go? He asked anxiously. I still have the job, Joy told him, still processing what had happened. Your mother called them. She took it all back. Daniel smiled slightly. Good. Did you make that happen? Let's just say she and I came to an understanding. Joy studied his face. You threatened her somehow. Daniel shrugged. I simply made it clear that her actions had consequences. Thank you, Joy said softly. But Daniel, I don't want to be the cause of a family war. You're not, he assured her. This has been brewing for a long time. Since my grandfather died, I've been letting my mother run things her way. It's time I stepped up and honored his true legacy, which was never about money or power, but about responsibility and compassion. Joy touched his arm gently. He would be proud of you. Daniel covered her hand with his. I hope so. After a moment he added, Can I give you a ride home? Joy nodded and they got into his car. As they drove she realized something. The article, she said suddenly. People at work will have seen it. They'll think. My lawyer is already handling it, Daniel assured her. Retractions will be published by evening. And if anyone at the hospital gives you trouble, Dr. Washington seems like the kind of person who won't tolerate gossip. Joy leaned back against the seat, overwhelmed by how quickly her life had changed in just a few days. From nearly jumping off a bridge to defending her against his powerful mother, Daniel Matthews was unlike anyone she had ever met. What happens now? She asked quietly. Daniel glanced at her. Whatever we want. No pressure, no rush. We get to know each other better. We see where this goes. Joy smiled, the first genuine smile she'd felt in days. I'd like that. As they pulled up to her building, the one she no longer had to leave, Daniel reached over and took her hand. Joy, he said seriously. I want you to know something. I'm not trying to save you or be your hero. You've been saving yourself for years. I just want the chance to be part of your life. Those words, more than anything else, told Joy that Daniel truly saw her, not as a charity case or a novelty, but as a strong woman who had survived everything life had thrown at her. For the first time in years, Joy allowed herself to hope that maybe, just maybe, her heart might be safe with someone after all. What neither of them knew was that Catherine Matthews had made the call to the hospital not just because of Daniel's threats, but because she had received a visitor of her own just before Daniel arrived. Someone who had known her longer than anyone else alive, someone who had finally decided to step out of the shadows and set things right. 3 weeks later, Joy's life had found a new rhythm. Her job at the hospital was challenging but fulfilling. She and Daniel had been seeing each other regularly. Simple dinners, walks in the park, getting to know each other without the drama that had marked their first meetings. Tonight, Daniel had invited her to his home for the first time, Not the penthouse downtown where he sometimes stayed, but his actual house, a place few people ever saw. As the car approached massive gates, Joy felt a flutter of nervousness. What had seemed so natural in neutral settings might feel different in Daniel's world. The gates opened to reveal not the mansion she had expected, but a beautiful, relatively modest home surrounded by gardens. It was large, certainly, but warm and inviting rather than imposing. Daniel met her at the door himself, casually dressed in jeans and a sweater. "Welcome," he said, taking her hand. "This was my grandfather's house. I moved in after he died." He gave her a tour, telling stories about his grandfather as they went. The house was filled with books, art from local artists, and comfortable furniture that invited you to sit and stay a while. "He sounds like he was an amazing person," Joy observed as they settled in the kitchen where Daniel was cooking dinner, another surprise. "He was," Daniel agreed, stirring something that smelled delicious. "Everyone thought he was just a brilliant businessman, but he was so much more. He taught me everything important about life, though I haven't always listened as well as I should have." Joy watched him move confidently around the kitchen. "You miss him a lot?" "Every day." Daniel paused, looking thoughtful. "Actually, there's something I've been meaning to tell you. About what's been happening with my mother." "Oh." Joy tensed slightly. "She's backed off completely. No more interference, no more pressure about the Porter merger, nothing. At first I thought it was just because of my threats, but it's more than that. She's different somehow." "Different how?" Daniel set down his spoon. "Like she's had some kind of revelation. Last week, she actually approved all my changes to the development project, including the affordable housing component I insisted on for your old building." Joy was surprised. From everything Daniel had told her, Catherine Matthews didn't seem like someone who changed easily. "Do you think she's planning something?" Joy asked cautiously. "That was my first thought too," Daniel admitted. "But then she did something even stranger. She invited me to dinner and apologized, for how she's been since grandfather died. Said she'd lost sight of what he really wanted for the company and the family." Before Joy could respond, they were interrupted by the doorbell. Daniel looked at his watch, frowning. "I'm not expecting anyone." He went to answer the door while Joy remained in the kitchen, listening curiously. She heard a man's voice, deep and slightly raspy with age, followed by Daniel's surprised exclamation. "Edward? What are you doing here?" The voices moved closer, and soon Daniel returned to the kitchen accompanied by an elderly black man with a dignified bearing despite his slight stoop. He walked with a cane but moved with purpose. "Joy, this is Edward Jenkins. He was my grandfather's closest friend and advisor for over 50 years. Daniel's expression was puzzled but pleased. "Edward, this is Joy Wilson." Edward's eyes, keen and sharp despite his age, studied Joy with interest. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Ms. Wilson," he said, his voice warm. "I've heard good things about you." "From who?" Joy asked, surprised. Edward smiled mysteriously. "I have my sources." He turned to Daniel. "I apologize for interrupting your evening, but there's something important I need to discuss with both of you." Daniel looked concerned. "Is everything okay?" "That depends on your perspective," Edward replied. "Mind if I sit?" "These old legs aren't what they used to be." They settled in the living room, Edward declining Daniel's offer of dinner with a wave of his hand. "I won't stay long," he said. "But it's time you knew the truth, Daniel. About your mother's sudden change of heart. About a lot of things." Daniel and Joy exchanged glances. "I'm listening," Daniel said. Edward nodded, gathering his thoughts. "Your grandfather and I met in 1964. Two young men with big dreams but different opportunities because of the color of our skin. Robert, your grandfather, had family money and connections. I had nothing but determination." He shifted in his seat, his eyes distant with memory. "We became friends when he hired me to work in his first factory. He recognized my potential when nobody else would. Together, we built Matthews Global from a small manufacturing operation to what it is today. He was the face, the name, but many of the ideas, the strategies came from our partnership." Daniel looked stunned. "Why haven't I heard this before?" "Because that's how we wanted it," Edward explained. "In those days, a black man couldn't be openly acknowledged as the co-founder of a major company. So I stayed in the background. Your grandfather made me rich, gave me shares, positions of authority behind the scenes, his trust. But to the world, I was just a loyal employee." Edward tapped his cane thoughtfully on the carpet. "Robert always said that someday when the time was right, the truth would come out. But then he got sick so suddenly, and I respected his wishes to keep our arrangement private until after he was gone." "And my mother?" Daniel asked. What does this have to do with her change of heart? Edward's expression turned serious. After Robert died, I watched you struggle with the company with Catherine's control. I saw her pushing you toward choices Robert would never have approved of. The Porter merger, covering up the safety violations, the eviction project. None of that was what we built the company for. He leaned forward, his gaze intense. So I went to see her. Showed her documents Robert had left with me, letters, recordings, his true wishes for the company and for you. I also showed her evidence of my ownership stake, nearly 30% of Matthews Global. Edward smiled slightly at Daniel's shocked expression. Yes, I've been a silent partner all these years. Robert's instructions were to reveal this only if the company strayed from its original purpose, to build wealth that could be used to help others, not harm them. Joy was fascinated by this unexpected turn of events. So you're the reason she backed off? The reason she called the hospital? Edward nodded. I made it clear that if she continued on her path, I would go public with everything. My role in the company, Robert's true intentions, the cover-ups. The Matthews name would be forever changed. She had no choice but to step back. Daniel seemed to be processing this enormous revelation. All these years, you were there helping shape everything. Why didn't grandfather tell me? He was going to, Edward said gently. That last week before the stroke. He had it all planned out. He wanted to introduce us properly to prepare you for the truth. A silence fell over the room as Daniel absorbed this information. Finally he asked, why tell me now? Why tonight? Edward's eyes crinkled with a smile as he looked between Daniel and Joy. Because I've been watching you these past weeks. The changes you're making at the company, the way you've stood up to Catherine. And most importantly, how you've handled this relationship. He nodded toward Joy. When I heard how you two met, a poor young woman helping a rich man in distress, with no idea who he was or what he could do for her, it reminded me of something. What? Joy asked. My late wife Josephine, Edward said softly. She found me drunk in an alley in 1963, after I'd been beaten up for trying to eat at a whites-only restaurant. She helped me, patched me up, gave me a place to stay, even though she had almost nothing herself. That kindness changed my life. He looked directly at Joy. Sound familiar? Joy felt warmth spread through her chest. This man understood what had happened on that bridge in a way no one else could. Joy reminded me of what's important, Daniel said quietly. Just like Josephine did for you. Edward nodded. Exactly. And that's why I knew it was time. Robert would have loved her, you know. He always said true character shows in how people treat others when there's nothing to gain. He stood up slowly, leaning on his cane. I should go. I've given you a lot to think about. Daniel rose quickly. Stay for dinner. Please. I have so many questions. Edward smiled. Another time. I've done what I came to do. He turned to Joy. It was a pleasure to meet you, Ms. Wilson. I have a feeling we'll be seeing more of each other. As Daniel walked him to the door, Joy remained in the living room, trying to process everything she'd just heard. This elderly man had changed the course of events with a single conversation. Had essentially saved her job, her home, and perhaps even her relationship with Daniel. When Daniel returned, his expression was a mix of wonder and confusion. Did you know? Joy asked. Any of it? Not a clue, Daniel admitted, sinking back onto the couch beside her. Though it explains so much. Grandfather was always secretive about certain aspects of the business. And he often mentioned Edward, but I had no idea they were so close. Or that Edward owned nearly a third of our company. What will you do now? Joy asked gently. Daniel took her hand. Everything I've been trying to do, but better. With Edward's support, we can really transform Matthews Global into the force for good my grandfather and he intended it to be. He brought her hand to his lips, kissing it softly. And I want you by my side while I do it. Your perspective, your experience, I need that. Not as an employee or a charity case, but as my partner. Joy's heart swelled at his words. Partner? In every way, Daniel said, his eyes meeting hers. If you'll have me. Joy thought about everything that had happened since that rainy night on the bridge. How her life had transformed in ways she could never have imagined. But more importantly, how Daniel had grown, had fought for what was right, had fought for her. I think, she said slowly, that your grandfather and Edward would be very proud of the man you're becoming. Daniel pulled her close, his arms encircling her. What about you? Are you proud of me too? Joy smiled against his shoulder. I'm getting there. Their dinner grew cold on the stove, forgotten as they talked late into the night about the past, the present, and a future that suddenly held more promise than either of them had dared to hope for just weeks ago. And across town, Edward Jenkins sat in his study, looking at an old photograph of himself and Robert Matthews, two young men with their arms around each other's shoulders, standing in front of a small factory building. He raised a glass of whiskey in a silent toast. "It worked, old friend," he murmured. "Your grandson found his way, and someone to walk beside him. Just like we did." 6 months later, Joy stood in front of the bathroom mirror, hardly recognizing her reflection. Not because of her simple but elegant blue dress or the modest silver necklace Daniel had given her for her birthday, but because of the confidence in her eyes, the ease in her smile. Tonight was the grand opening of the Matthews Jenkins Community Health Center, built on the site where her old apartment building had once stood. But unlike most development projects, this one had not displaced its residents. Instead, through Daniel and Edward's new initiative, every tenant had been offered better housing at the same rent, plus the opportunity to become homeowners through an innovative program. The health center would serve the neighborhood where Joy had struggled for so long, providing care regardless of ability to pay. And as the new director of community outreach for the entire Matthews Jenkins Foundation, Joy had been instrumental in its design and implementation. A knock at her apartment door interrupted her thoughts. This was a new apartment, still modest but in a better building. Joy had insisted on paying her own rent, refusing Daniel's offer to move in with him. "Some things need time," she had told him. He had understood. She opened the door to find Daniel waiting, handsome in a dark suit but with an uncharacteristically nervous expression. "Ready for the big night?" he asked, kissing her cheek. "As ready as I'll ever be," Joy replied, grabbing her purse. "Is Edward meeting us there?" "Yes, along with the board and—" Daniel hesitated. "My mother." Joy tried not to tense. Though Catherine Matthews had kept her distance these past months, their few meetings had been cordial but cool. "It'll be fine," Daniel assured her, reading her expression. "She's actually been supportive of the center. I think Edward's influence has been good for her." The drive to the center took them through Joy's old neighborhood, now beginning to transform without displacing its residents. The Matthews Jenkins Initiative, as it was now called, focused on community development that benefited existing residents rather than pushing them out for wealthier newcomers. As they approached the new building, modern but welcoming with its glass front and healing garden, Joy felt a surge of pride. Her ideas were built into its very design: the childcare center for patients, the education rooms, the welcoming spaces where people could gather. "Nervous?" Daniel asked as the car stopped. "A little," Joy admitted. "Big crowds aren't really my thing." "You'll be amazing," he said, squeezing her hand. "Just remember, these people are here because of your vision." "Our vision," he corrected himself. Inside, the center was already filling with guests: board members, healthcare professionals, community leaders, and most importantly, residents from the neighborhood. Joy moved through the crowd with growing confidence, introducing herself, explaining the center's services, listening to people's stories and concerns. Edward arrived with his daughter and grandchildren, his pride evident as he showed them around his center. Catherine Matthews stood with a group of donors, surprisingly animated as she discussed the foundation's new direction. As the time approached for the official remarks, Joy found herself on the small stage with Daniel, Edward, and, to her surprise, Catherine. Daniel stepped to the microphone first. "Thank you all for coming tonight to celebrate the opening of the Matthews Jenkins Community Health Center," he began. "This center represents not just a new building, but a new direction for our company and our foundation, a return to the original vision of its founders." He gestured to Edward, who smiled and nodded in acknowledgement. "For too long, development has come at the expense of communities like this one. People have been pushed out of their homes, separated from their support networks, all in the name of progress. Tonight, we demonstrate a different approach: development that lifts up existing residents rather than displacing them." Daniel's gaze found Joy in the crowd, his eyes warm. "This center would not exist without the insight and determination of our Director of Community Outreach, Joy Wilson. Joy showed me what true community means, and reminded me of my responsibility to use privilege and power to help, not harm." Joy felt her cheeks warm as applause filled the room. Daniel continued, introducing Edward, who spoke briefly about his long partnership with Robert Matthews and their shared dream of using business success to create positive change. Then, to Joy's surprise, Catherine stepped forward. "I would like to say a few words," she began, her voice clear and confident. "Many of you know me as Catherine Matthews, the woman who has guided Matthews Global since my father-in-law's death. What you may not know is how far I had strayed from his vision. our vision. She glanced at Edward, who nodded encouragingly. Recent months have been a time of reflection for me, Catherine continued, of recognizing mistakes and committing to a better path forward. This center represents that commitment, to this community, to ethical business practices, and to the true legacy of Robert Matthews and Edward Jenkins. Her gaze found Joy in the crowd. I would also like to acknowledge the contribution of Joy Wilson, whose perspective has been invaluable. Sometimes it takes someone from outside our privileged circles to help us see clearly. Joy could hardly believe what she was hearing. This was as close to a public apology as Catherine Matthews would likely ever come. The ceremony concluded with the symbolic cutting of a ribbon, photographers capturing the moment when Daniel, Edward, Catherine and Joy stood together, united in purpose if not yet in complete harmony. As the evening wound down, Joy found herself alone for a moment in the center's rooftop garden, taking a breather from the crowds and conversations. The city lights sparkled below, the same city that had once seemed so hostile to her dreams. There you are, Daniel's voice came from behind her. I've been looking for you. Joy turned, smiling as he joined her at the railing. Just needed some air. It's been quite a night. Indeed it has. Daniel seemed oddly nervous again, shifting his weight from foot to foot. Your mother's speech was surprising, Joy observed. Do you think she meant it? I do, Daniel said. Catherine Matthews doesn't say things she doesn't mean, for better or worse. Edward has had a profound impact on her. Seeing the truth about her father-in-law's legacy, about what the company was meant to be, it changed something in her. Joy nodded, gazing back out at the city. People can change when they're given the chance. I've seen it over and over in my work. Like me? Daniel asked softly. Joy turned to him, reaching up to touch his face gently. You didn't change who you were, Daniel. You remembered who you were meant to be. There's a difference. Daniel caught her hand, holding it against his cheek. Joy, there's something I need to ask you. The seriousness in his tone made her pulse quicken. What is it? To her amazement, Daniel lowered himself to one knee, still holding her hand. From his pocket he produced a small velvet box. Joy Wilson, he said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes, you found me on the darkest night of my life and showed me a path back to myself. You challenged me, inspired me and loved me, not for my name or my wealth but for who I truly am. He opened the box, revealing a ring, beautiful but not ostentatious, with a diamond surrounded by smaller sapphires that matched her eyes. I don't want to live another day without you by my side. Will you marry me? Joy felt tears welling in her eyes, tears of joy after so many years of sorrow. This man kneeling before her had seen her at her lowest, had respected her pride and her strength, had fought for her against his own family. And she had seen him at his lowest too, had watched him grow into the leader and the man his grandfather and Edward had always believed he could be. Yes, she said simply, her voice full of certainty. Yes, I will marry you. Daniel slipped the ring onto her finger, then stood and pulled her into his arms, kissing her deeply as the city lights twinkled around them. Neither of them noticed the door to the garden opening quietly, or Edward and Catherine standing there, watching the moment unfold. Robert would be pleased, Edward said softly. Catherine nodded, a complex mixture of emotions on her face. Yes, she agreed after a moment. I believe he would. As they discreetly withdrew, leaving the couple to their private moment, Joy and Daniel remained wrapped in each other's arms, the past behind them and the future, bright with promise, stretching out before them. What had begun on a bridge in the rain had led them here, to a different kind of bridge, one between worlds, between experiences, between hearts. A bridge neither of them would ever have to cross alone again. 1 year after their engagement, Joy stood in a dressing room at Edward's estate, where she and Daniel had chosen to hold their wedding. The ceremony would be intimate, only their closest friends and family in attendance. You look beautiful, Letitia said, adjusting Joy's simple but elegant gown. As her oldest friend and now the assistant director of the community outreach program, Letitia had been by Joy's side through every step of this journey. Joy studied her reflection, barely recognizing the confident woman looking back at her. The past year had been one of growth and change, establishing new programs through the foundation, expanding the health center services, and building a life with Daniel based on mutual respect and shared purpose. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Joy. It was Catherine's voice. May I come in? Joy and Letitia exchanged surprised glances. Though Catherine had gradually warmed to Joy over the past year, they were still forming their relationship one careful step at a time. Of course, Joy called. Catherine entered, elegant as always in a pale blue dress. Her expression was unusually soft as she took in Joy's appearance. "You look lovely," she said simply. "Thank you," Joy replied. "Is everything okay?" Catherine nodded to Letitia, who tactfully excused herself, leaving the two women alone. "I wanted to give you something," Catherine said, holding out a small velvet box. It belonged to Robert's mother, Daniel's great-grandmother. Joy opened the box to find a delicate sapphire and diamond bracelet that matched her engagement ring perfectly. "Catherine, I can't accept this," Joy began, but the older woman cut her off gently. "Yes, you can. And you will." Catherine's tone was firm but not unkind. It was Robert's wish that it go to the woman Daniel would eventually marry. "He left instructions with Edward." Joy looked up in surprise. "He did?" Catherine smiled slightly. "My father-in-law was apparently quite the matchmaker from beyond the grave. Edward has been sharing more of Robert's writings and recordings with me. He had great hopes for Daniel, and concerns about my influence." There was a hint of regret in her voice that Joy had never heard before. "He wanted Daniel to find someone strong," Catherine continued. "Someone who would love him for himself, not his position or wealth. Someone who would challenge him to be better." Joy carefully took the bracelet from its box. "And you think I'm that person?" "I know you are," Catherine said simply. "I was wrong about you, Joy. Wrong in ways I'm still coming to understand." She helped Joy fasten the bracelet around her wrist. "My husband, Daniel's father, was a weak man who married me for my family connections. I wanted better for Daniel. I thought the Porter girl, with her education and background, would be suitable." Catherine's eyes met Joy's in the mirror. "I didn't understand that what Daniel needed wasn't someone from our world, but someone who could show him a different one." Joy was touched by this unexpected openness. "Thank you for telling me this." "There's more," Catherine said, her expression growing serious. "Something you need to know before you marry my son." Joy tensed slightly. "What is it?" "It's about Edward," Catherine began. "And Robert. And me." Over the next 15 minutes, Catherine shared a story that left Joy stunned. The true history of the Matthews family and their relationship with Edward Jenkins. How Robert and Edward had not just been business partners but best friends since childhood. How Edward had stepped back publicly to protect the business in racist times. And most surprisingly, how Catherine had known Edward her entire life. "Edward's mother worked for my family," Catherine explained. "He and I grew up together, though society kept us in very different circles. When I married into the Matthews family, Robert was overjoyed. He thought having someone who understood Edward's importance would ensure the partnership continued." Catherine's voice grew tight with regret. "But I was determined to prove myself as a Matthews, to show I belonged in that world of privilege and power. I began to distance myself from Edward, to treat him as the employee everyone thought he was rather than the partner and friend he had always been." She paced the small room, her composure slipping slightly. "After Robert died, I was consumed with protecting what I thought was the Matthews legacy. I didn't understand that I was destroying it instead." Joy listened in amazement as Catherine revealed this hidden history. "Does Daniel know this?" "Edward told him part of it last week," Catherine admitted. "But not my role. I wanted you to hear it from me before you join our family. No more secrets, no more hidden truths." Joy was deeply moved by this gesture of trust and vulnerability from a woman who had once tried to destroy her reputation and career. "Thank you for telling me," she said softly. "It can't have been easy." Catherine shook her head. "Nothing worthwhile ever is." She straightened, composing herself. "Now I should let you finish getting ready. Your future husband is probably wearing a path in Edward's lawn with his pacing." As she turned to leave, Joy called after her. "Catherine?" The older woman paused. "I'm glad you're here today," Joy said sincerely. "It means a lot to Daniel, and to me." Something shifted in Catherine's expression, a softening, a relief perhaps. "I'm glad to be here," she replied. And Joy believed her. Outside, in the beautiful gardens of Edward's estate, a small gathering of guests waited for the ceremony to begin. Daniel stood beneath an arch of flowers, Edward beside him as his best man, their relationship now openly that of honorary grandfather and grandson. When the music began and Joy appeared at the end of the aisle, a collective murmur of appreciation rose from the guests. But Daniel saw only her, the woman who had saved him on that bridge, who had shown him a world beyond his privilege, who had loved him at his worst and helped him become his best. Joy walked alone, a deliberate choice that symbolized the strength and independence she brought to their union. As she reached Daniel, he took her hands in his eyes shining with love and promise. "You found me," he whispered, words meant only for her. We found each other, she corrected gently. The ceremony was simple and heartfelt. They exchanged vows they had written themselves, speaking of bridges crossed and worlds connected, of respect and partnership, of using privilege to create change. When they were pronounced husband and wife, the small gathering erupted in cheers. Edward beamed with pride. Catherine dabbed discreetly at her eyes. Letitia hooped with joy. At the reception, Edward tapped his glass for attention, rising somewhat stiffly to his feet with the help of his cane. I've known Daniel since he was born, he began, his deep voice carrying across the gathering. And though I've only known Joy for a shorter time, I recognized in her immediately the same quality I saw in her husband's grandfather. A compassionate heart combined with an unflinching commitment to doing what's right. He raised his glass. To Joy and Daniel, may you continue to build bridges where others see only chasms. May you use your combined strength to lift others up. And may you never forget that true wealth lies not in bank accounts but in how many lives you touch for the better. To Joy and Daniel, the guests echoed, raising their glasses. Later, as they danced under the stars, Joy rested her head against Daniel's shoulder, feeling a sense of peace she had never known before. Happy? Daniel murmured against her hair. More than I thought possible, she replied honestly. As they swayed to the music, Joy reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From that rain-soaked bridge to this garden filled with those who loved them. From two broken people to two whole people who had chosen to build a life together. I want to show you something, Daniel said as the song ended. He led her away from the dance floor, toward a quiet corner of the garden where a small table held what looked like a wrapped gift. What's this? Joy asked, curious. Open it, Daniel encouraged. Joy unwrapped the package to find a leather-bound book. Opening it, she gasped softly. Inside were photographs, dozens of them, showing various community projects. The health center, new housing developments, education programs, small business initiatives. These are all Matthews Jenkins Foundation projects, she said, turning the pages in wonder. Turn to the back, Daniel suggested. The final pages contained blank spaces, waiting to be filled. This is our legacy book, Daniel explained. Started by my grandfather and Edward, continued by us. Each project, each life changed, documented here. And all those empty pages? That's our future, Joy. All the good we're going to do together. Joy traced the empty pages with her fingertips, imagining the stories they would tell, the lives they would touch. It's perfect, she whispered. Daniel took her hand, the one wearing both her wedding ring and the bracelet Catherine had given her, symbols of a past honored and a future embraced. When I stood on that bridge, I thought my life was over, he said softly. I had no idea it was just beginning. Joy squeezed his hand, remembering her own despair that night. The eviction notice, the empty bank account, the feeling that no matter how hard she worked, nothing would ever change. Sometimes help comes from the most unexpected places, she said. From across the garden, Edward watched them, his aged face peaceful. Beside him, Catherine stood, her expression thoughtful as she observed her son and his bride. They'll do good things together, Edward said. Catherine nodded. Better than we did, perhaps. It's as it should be, Edward replied. Each generation building on the foundation laid by those who came before. As the evening wore on, Joy and Daniel moved among their guests, two people from different worlds who had created a new one together. A world where privilege became purpose, where pain became healing, where bridges connected rather than divided. And when they drove away that night, tin cans rattling behind their car and "Just Married" painted on the back window, Letitia's handiwork, they weren't just leaving a wedding celebration. They were driving toward a future neither of them could have imagined on that rainy night when a poor young woman had saved a rich man from himself, not knowing that in helping him find his way back, she would also find her own path forward. Little had she known then that he was a billionaire. Even less had she imagined that one day, they would use that wealth to change lives together. But the greatest fortune they shared wasn't measured in dollars, it was measured in trust, in respect, and in a love that had begun with simple kindness on a bridge between two worlds. 5 years later, Joy sat on a bench in the garden of the Matthews Jenkins Community Center, watching as Daniel chased their 3-year-old daughter, Roberta, named after his grandfather, around the playground. The little girl's laughter rang out, bright and clear in the summer air. So much had changed in those 5 years. The foundation now operated community centers in 12 cities, each one designed with input from local residents. The Affordable Housing Initiative had become a model studied by urban planners worldwide. And the Matthews Global Company had transformed its business practices, becoming a leader in ethical corporate behavior. Joy's own role had evolved as well. From community outreach director to full partner in all foundation activities, she now co-chaired the board with Daniel. Her perspective, shaped by her years of struggle, remained essential to their mission. "Mama, look," Roberta called, climbing to the top of the slide. "I'm high up." "I see you, baby," Joy called back, smiling as Daniel hovered protectively at the bottom of the slide. A shadow fell across the bench, and Joy looked up to find Catherine standing there, more casual than she would have been years ago in slacks and a simple blouse. "Mind if I join you?" she asked. "Please," Joy said, moving over to make room. They had developed an unexpected friendship over the years, built first on mutual respect for Daniel's sake, then gradually on genuine appreciation for each other's strengths. "Edward called this morning," Catherine said. "He's feeling much better after his surgery. The doctors say he can come home next week." Joy sighed with relief. At 85, Edward's recent heart surgery had worried them all. "That's wonderful news." "Indeed." Catherine watched her granddaughter play with her son, her expression softening. "She looks more like you every day. But she has the Matthews determination," Joy observed with a smile. "And your eye for detail." Catherine laughed softly. "Poor child, carrying all our traits." "I think she'll manage just fine," Joy replied, watching as Daniel helped Roberta down the slide, their heads bent together in conversation. For a moment, both women sat in companionable silence, appreciating the scene before them. "I never thought my life would turn out this way," Catherine admitted after a while. "After Robert died, I was so focused on maintaining control, on what I thought was protecting our legacy." "And now?" Joy asked gently. Catherine gestured toward Daniel and Roberta. "Now I understand what legacy truly means. It's not about buildings with our name on them or money in the bank. It's about the lives we touch, the good we do, the values we pass on." Joy nodded, thinking of the leather-bound book Daniel had given her on their wedding day. It was nearly full now, with only a few blank pages remaining. Soon they would start a new volume. "Joy, Catherine, come see what Roberta can do," Daniel called, waving them over. As they rose to join father and daughter, Catherine touched Joy's arm lightly. "Thank you," she said simply. "For what?" Joy asked, surprised. "For saving my son. Not just that night on the bridge, but every day since." Joy shook her head. "We saved each other," she corrected gently. "And together we're trying to save a little corner of the world." Catherine smiled, a genuine smile that transformed her once stern face. "Yes, I believe you are." They crossed the garden to where Daniel was now helping Roberta build a sand castle, the little girl directing the operation with adorable seriousness. "Grandma, come help," Roberta called, spotting Catherine. As Catherine knelt in the sand, designer slacks and all, to assist her granddaughter, Joy felt Daniel's arms slip around her waist. "Happy?" he whispered, echoing the question he had asked on their wedding night. Joy looked around at the community center bustling with activity, at Catherine bonding with their daughter, at the life they had built together. A life dedicated to making a difference. "Beyond happy," she replied, leaning into his embrace. "Grateful." Daniel pressed a kiss to her temple. "Me too. Every single day." Later that evening, after Roberta was tucked in bed with Catherine volunteering to stay and watch her while they went out, Joy and Daniel found themselves walking across the same bridge where they had first met. It had become something of an anniversary tradition for them. They stopped at the spot where Joy had found Daniel that rainy night, now marked by a small discreet plaque that read simply, "Where a journey began." "Do you ever think about how different our lives would be if you hadn't been walking here that night?" Daniel asked, his arm around her shoulders. Joy considered this. "Sometimes. But I believe we were meant to find each other, one way or another." Daniel smiled, pulling her closer. "The poor woman and the billionaire. Who would have thought?" "Not me," Joy laughed. "But then again, I didn't know you were a billionaire. I just thought you were a man who needed help." "I was," Daniel said seriously. "More than I even realized." They stood together, watching the city lights reflect on the water below. The bridge that had once been a place of despair for both of them had become a symbol of hope, of the connections possible between different worlds, different experiences. "Ready to go home?" Daniel asked after a while. Joy nodded, taking his hand. They walked back across the bridge together, leaving behind the spot where their story began but carrying its lessons with them. The abandoned young woman and the troubled billionaire had found in each other not just love, but purpose. And in that purpose, they had built a legacy greater than either could have imagined on that rain-soaked night when two worlds collided, and two hearts began to heal.